And people were like, oh my gosh, how come we didn't know this information? I was like, because true academics kind of think that everyone reads their papers, but no one really expresses it. So I think my academic career was kind of on the edge where I never really fit in on either side. Like industry's like, oh, you're a professor. What do you know? You don't know how to push stuff out. And then people in academia are like, oh, well, you're not true to your word because you're not publish or perish. So it's like trying to find that niche. And it's very unusual. There's a few of us that I found that can actually do the science and translate it. And I think that's a unique property within academia that's kind of missing. So yeah, how did it drive? Trying to go in there and answer questions, but then also apply it as an athlete, as a coach, as a consultant, and be like, hey, these are the things that we know. These are the things that other colleagues are doing. So if we look at the whole body of research, this is probably best practice.
Mm-hmm. What are the main questions that you wanted to answer specific to exercise and nutrition and how that may be different for female physiology and for optimizing health and performance for females?
I think the first drive was really about hydration, which we talked off air a little bit about. Knowing thermal loads are different. Women respond differently to thermal loads. And that drive was from racing Ironman in Kona and looking at all of us who are coming from the Southern Hemisphere to go race in Hawaii conditions. And we're being told to drink X amount of sports drink every 15 minutes. And it just wasn't working. So it's like, wait, there's something here. We know about thermal load. We know about acclimatization, but again, it was based on male data. So how are we going to look at women knowing that they have a different response to thermal load? How are we going to use that to the advantage? And then as we start getting into it, it's like, well, protein is the recommendations for women based on sedentary old men. So how does that translate to younger muscle and active women? So how much protein do we need? When do we need it? We know that in the luteal phase, there's a 12% increase in protein oxidation. So why is that not represented in guidelines? When we start looking at guidelines, like the carbohydrate guidelines, right? There are, I think 8 studies that were done on women, and none of them have to do with carbohydrate intake. It has to do with amenorrhea. It has to do with bone health, but yet they're thrown in there with carbohydrate guidelines. So when you see 3 to 4 grams for light activity, it's like, really, what is that based on? It's based on male data. So it's just those basic guidelines through nutrition all the way through strength training, unpacking that and trying to really answer those questions or look at the case studies or the small N and outside of sport nutrition and outside of sports science data, pull it all together to get best practice recommendations specific for women.